Attendance, we're missing everybody here but Councillor Chatton. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I was waiting for some hands to come up. Councillor Alsop.
Yes, I have item 1.077, the BMX track expansion phase 2.
10077.
1.077.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Millette.
Any and all discussions regarding the police protection services
Okay, noted. Following items will not be dealt with at this meeting, 2 to 13 exclusive. Deputations, first we have Police Chief Mike Callahan and Police Service Board Chair Councillor Alsop will make a presentation to Council. Capital Issues number 1087 refers to resolution, the presentation by the Police Chief Mike Callahan and Police Service Board Councillor Alsop regarding the 23 police budget. You're ahead. You're there.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Alsop, and it is my great honor as Chair of the Police Services Board to introduce the 2023 Police Services Capital Budget. As Chair, along with Vice Chair Heather Smith, Member Jim O'Brien, Your Worship Mayor Ellis, and Police Services staff, we have reviewed all the line items and redacted and unredacted, and can attest that though the budget is large, all items included are reasonable and in fact essential for the safe, effective, and efficient operation of our police service. I urge my colleagues to support this budget. Thank you very much, and without further ado, I will call upon Chief Callahan to present the budget in detail.
Good morning, Chief. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, council members, for allowing this opportunity for me to appear in front of you. We have a lovely PowerPoint presentation, and somewhere between the station and here, it's gone out of my pocket, so I've got another one coming, but we'll continue on regardless because there was only 5 slides. So I was really looking forward to having a conversation with you and talking about our capital budget. And before I do, I think it's very, very important to illustrate the very positive interaction that we've had with Brandon Ferguson and his team over the last couple of years, and obviously with Carol Hines as well. And historically, we have not done a good job of having our budgeted and our actuals come in together. And I'm happy to report over 2021 and 2022 especially, we have finally got there, and feel very, very confident that with this budget and the next budget for the operational budget that we're going to have before you in April, that we're going to be able to be on those targets, those budgeted line items moving forward. As always with the police service, because of the nature of the business that we do, sometimes we get involved in incredibly large investigations that sometimes go beyond our control as far as what we can do in relation to ensuring that we have sufficient resources, but at the same time not overextending those resources in the context of overtime. So without any further ado, one thing that I wanted to show everybody was this was a capital budget item that was on the budget line for last year, and the body-worn cameras have made a significant difference in our community. And a great illustration of that is yesterday we had a year-long project commenced that's called Project Coyote. And this project has made is going to make a significant impact in organized crime in our community. And we worked very closely with the OPP, and we worked very, very closely with the Toronto Police, the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario, and a bunch of other provincial partners as well to pull this off. And this is something that we've been wanting to do for about the last 4 years and just haven't been in a position to do it because of the amount of money that's involved. We were very fortunate in that we were able to have the Central Intelligence Service of Ontario and the OPP support us in this major investigation, and you'll hear in the results from this afternoon from the news release, it was incredibly successful. Now, the reason I wanted to show you that body-worn camera was yesterday when we were doing the takedowns, we had all of our officers wear the body-worn camera, and the tactical officers actually were able to put on the live streaming function, and the 3 Crown attorneys that are assigned to this investigation were able to witness the entry into all the residences that we did here. So having that kind of material evidence and being able to have the Crown attorney there that's going to prosecute these cases, it's just lock, stock, and barrel. So it makes a significant impact on our ability to produce the evidence and produce that evidence at trial as well. As well, when the officers are walking around and doing their initial safety check of the interior after everybody in that residence is arrested, that's all documented as well. So it's that first best evidence rule, and it's making a significant difference. So thank you for your support on that previously. Moving on to our 2023 capital budget. We believe that our budget this year is definitely, as I mentioned, going to address the organizational needs. And what we've tried to do as well is we've tried to ensure that the items in that budget are very pertinent to the 2023 year budget cycle, and anything that we could put off for another couple of years, we did. We have sought funding opportunities from the provincial government, from the federal government, and we've still got one potentially coming in from the provincial government that may offset our operational budget, which is going to be huge. We work very, very diligently with our executive management team, and every section that submitted a capital budget was gone over in great detail to ensure that those items were pertinent for this year and that it was a need list as opposed to a wish list. We started off at $3.4 million, and we're now down to, you'll see, $1.3 million. So we've tried to ensure that we've enlisted the support of community members. As a matter of fact, a large item, we're looking at putting automated external defibrillators in all of our police vehicles, and we have some members from the community that have chipped in 2/3 of that. So out of the 30,000, 20,000 has already been raised by donations in the community, which is huge to help offset that capital budget. You will note that in your documentation that you received for our capital budget, that some of the items have been redacted, and the purpose of that is we don't want to be in a position to give away some of the methods that we're able to utilize to gather evidence surreptitiously. So the board, Police Services Board, has gone through it in great detail. They understand what those items are and the necessity for those items, and subsequently, there were no questions from the board on those items. So if you see those or you have questions related to something you see that is blank, unfortunately, I cannot comment on those. So with that being said, if there are any questions, I will gladly answer any of the questions that the council members or the mayor may have. Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, and through you. Thank you, Chief Callahan. I was wondering if you could explain just briefly the request for the non-lethal use of force weapon funding that was part of the report. How important, excuse me, how important that is for our police services to have access to. Thank you.
Absolutely. When we look at de-escalation techniques, our focus on training is incredibly exhaustive, and when an officer is no longer able to utilize verbal commands for de-escalation, they have to resort to some type of use of force. And with that use of force, there are many options. One is the taser, which is included in this budget, and the current tasers that we use, and like everything else, has a shelf life to it, and these tasers that we are currently using are no longer supported, and they've moved to the next generation, which is a safer generation of taser. It's more effective and more efficient, and not only for the individual who you're having to use that less lethal use of force option on, but also for the officer, because of the technology that is in that unit to deliver the correct amount of voltage to incapacitate that individual until such time as he or she can be handcuffed. So it's critical to have this because I'm actually carrying one of the older ones, and its life cycle is actually gone. And I think we've had these now for about 7 years, I think, is the life expectancy. And so we've had to move on to the next generation, which is huge to ensure that every officer has one in our community. Some agencies don't, and you'll find that as a result of that, the officers in some cases have to go hands-on more, and there's a greater likelihood or propensity for the subject or the officer to be injured in the altercation.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Carr?
Yes. Thank you. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
I got a couple questions. Just with respect to the TASER program, and I'm familiar with the technology and also its purpose. My question is, how many TASERs do you have out now in terms of deployment that's out for issued to staff as they're working, training purposes? How many do you have in stock now?
I'm going to have to defer to
Yeah.
Deputy Barry because he'll have the specifics on that.
I believe we have about 40 in stock right now, somewhere around there, but they're depleting every day. We're losing 2, 3 every month because they're not supported anymore.
Is that, is that a standard amount that you've had for issue as well as backup for a number of years?
It's less than we've had in the past, again, because they're not supported as they break, wear down, we can't replace them or fix them anymore. So I would say we're down probably 15 or 20 from what we normally would be.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking that is because, and I know in the past, the police services come here, ask for the tasers, and obviously, you know, or the funding for that, and that's been included. But I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around buying 92 of them to issue to everyone. Obviously, everyone is not working, and in addition to that, even if you were to have a major incident, arguably, I can't see a full deployment unless you can tell me differently. So I'm having a hard time understanding why it would be to that maximum amount.
So what we've done is we've looked at it in the same principle as we had when we came to City Council and the Police Services Board a few years ago about the portable radios. And when you have a portable issue that's issued to an individual officer, they tend to take better care of it as a result of it being issued to them. So we saw a significant decrease in the damage to radios as a result of having individual issues. There was a greater likelihood that we wouldn't be going through as many radios as what we historically were, and it's the same thing on the tasers.
Okay. A couple other questions, if
go
I
ahead,
could.
Councillor.
The drone that you have here for the traffic safety unit, and the other one, it's no longer supported. Did you have one? So how long has that one been in service?
I believe that one has been in service since I came here in 2000. We got it in the middle of 2016.
Okay.
So it's a little over 7 years.
Okay. And then another one is the Rogue Echo bike. Does the association members contribute towards equipment purchases as well?
They do.
Okay.
Actually, most of the equipment in the gym has actually been provided by the association.
Okay, very good. And then in relation to the two vehicles, you got a 2018 Tahoe and a 2017 vehicle. One's at 165,000 kilometers, the other one's at 153. Is that the standard age and mileage that a police vehicle would need to be replaced?
No, no.
Okay.
Actually, that's that would have been the mileage last fall when we put this budget together. So that mileage is actually increased.
Okay.
The problem being is we can't get vehicles. Like we've been told that we've ordered vehicles for last year for 23, and they're now telling us you may not get them till 24. As a matter of fact, we've even come to the Police Services Board because we have Tahoes and other vehicles sitting because we can't get brakes. There are no police package brakes across the country. So we've had to look at other means to get these vehicles back on the road. And I know that we're not the only one. And as a matter of fact, the deputy and I in March are going to a small and mid-size police service meeting. And one of the items that we're bringing forward is to put a letter forward to the Premier requesting their assistance from a political perspective to push the manufacturers to produce these police package brakes, because not only do we use them, but CBSA uses them. And if we can't put vehicles on the road, that's a significant detriment to us getting out.
So in essence, what you're telling me is because of the supply chain issue, this is kind of a preemptive order, knowing that it'll be a little while before you actually get the product?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Chief, for coming in and giving your couple of questions. It's more on the addition of items for the building, like you got railings, east sidewalk, soundproofing, executive boardroom. Were these addressed at all during the original building, or these are items that has come up since the building was built? Like, the building's only what? How old is the building now?
We moved in October 14th, 2020.
So, and I'm a little concerned that we're adding another, I don't know, $50,000 just on items that I thought should have been in the building. So is there a reason why we're finding these now, or?
The first one for the sidewalk is a health and safety issue, because we've had people trip and fall, and as a result of that, we've said, okay, we've met with the health and safety committee, we've looked at options, and we've gone with the most inexpensive option, that sidewalk and a railing. And we have to quite often put out notices to people about the way the water's coming off and you'll see there's an eaves troughing request in there as well for the back of the carport, and that's to stop the ice from forming and people tripping. And putting a sidewalk there, it's a health and safety concern, and it's been brought up many times. How many falls have we had this year, Paige? 2? 2 or 3 falls already this year, and it's going to be a significant liability to the Belleville Police Service and subsequently the city if we don't do something about it.
Okay, and the other question is, over on the computer workstations, there's 8 computer workstations. Are these upgrades in computers, or?
Like our tasers, they have the computers have a shelf life on them, and what we try to do is just replace a few as needed, and try to. Well, actually, I might as well explain now. What we're doing right now is we're in the process of building a amortization schedule for every piece of equipment we have in our entire organization. And that amortization schedule will actually forecast to a large extent what our capital budget is going to be moving forward, based on the fact that we say we've got a vehicle that, like the prisoner vehicle, that has a shelf life of about 7 or 8 years, and then they're just worn out, completely worn out. So that amortization schedule will be in there, and as well, we've sat down with Brandon this year, and we've actually put in our operational budget a capital reserve fund that will assist funding these capital projects moving forward. So we're trying to be in progressive for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Good to see you this morning, Chief.
Morning, Councillor.
And right off the top, congratulations on Project Coyote with the other police agencies. It's good work in making our community safer. So just wanted to get that in off the top.
Thank you.
I just want to go through a couple of things. Body cameras. We know that they bring transparency from both ends of those that are involved in maybe an altercation or whatever. We've seen the use of body cams from police agencies around the world in the last couple of years, and you get an idea what police officers deal with on a daily basis. So how many body cams does the Belleville Police Service have right now at the shop?
Deputy?
I believe it's 92, so.
Yeah.
92, so that's
92.
good.
Yep.
All right, good. That's quick answer. Perfect. That's one off the list. So the city's hoping to going to the new taser, and it's the Taser 7. Maybe you can just educate myself and colleagues. I would have expected, like, once you have a taser, you always have a taser. Like, it's like a gun, I think. It never goes out of style. But upgrading to new tasers.
Yep.
Why? I know you explained it, but just kind of give us the rationale why you have to change them.
Sure, absolutely. I'll actually take the cartridges out so we don't have any mishaps.
Oh, yeah, right there. Hey, practice on Councillor Alsop, okay?
So one thing that we aren't able to do right now is we have to do what is called a manual download of any information. So these, believe it or not, the technology that is incorporated inside the handle and in this portion right here is unbelievable. However, right now with this version, this information isn't downloaded. And some of that pertinent information that isn't downloaded is the fact that every morning the officers are asked to spark test. So you can see right there. And we don't have any way of recording that. And it's very, very vital to ensure that it is. So with the new Taser 7s, they will be downloaded and charged in a docking station, and it'll automatically provide updates into the unit, as well as it'll download the information as to when it was taken out of the holster, when it was spark tested, when it was deployed. And the new Taser 7 as well, this is a single cartridge. This cartridge works up to about really about 15 feet maximum. The new Taser 7 actually has a dual cartridge system, so it'll have essentially two cartridges. They're quite a bit longer and more narrow beside each other. And what ends up happening is in the wintertime, quite often when somebody is wearing thick clothing, it doesn't go through. And so you don't get the incapacitation effect, the muscular incapacitation that you're looking for. So then you have to, the officer has to stop, as you just saw, they take this cartridge out, they throw it out, they get another one out, and they put it in and reactivate. With this next version, you just press the trigger again and another one comes out of the other side of the gate. So significant advances. As I said, the technology, there'll be automatic uploads every day. Anything new that has to be, any new software upgrade is done on a daily basis as well. So it's going to make a significant difference for the safety of the officer and the safety of the individuals that are that the Taser is being used on.
All right, thank you. Just a couple more things. The downtown camera, you're replacing that after 5 years. Technology and video really works well with police agencies. Is that fair?
It really does.
Yeah.
And we've got the support again this year from the BDIA. They're supporting us with $13,000, as well as the money that we've asked for from the PSB and City Council, and that'll be going into the cameras to replace them, because some of them are just, you know, they're out there 24/7, 365, and although they're made for outdoor, they've got a shelf life too, and the 5 to 7 years is about the best that we're going to get out of them, and we're starting already to see some of them fail and degrade.
All right, final question. I'm not like doing a comedy piece here with the binoculars. So an officer or a detective is out and they're doing surveillance or checking in on somebody that might be doing something criminal in nature. Do today's binoculars actually videotape it? So are they at that stage with those? So it's like another form of archiving or putting out their evidence?
They are, but they're significantly more money, significantly. And then you have the issue of downloading that and putting it in backups for central repository to keep that data.
Okay.
So we are, and one of the reasons that we've asked for that is the Crown attorneys now are asking a lot more in relation to the prosecution of the cases, and surveillance is a big, big component of that.
Yeah, no, I just think if the officer's out recording something or watching individuals, if that's like, it's 2023 that we're recording that in real time as well. And
we definitely can. I think they're well over $25,000 a piece, though.
well, we can look at that next year. So.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Brown.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief, for allowing me to ask you a few questions. I'd like to go back to the downtown camera issue, and you and I have spoken about the 13,000. When the camera system downtown was originally implemented, it was done on a very significant grant that I believe the BIA and the police services had jointly applied for. And then the upgrade in 2017 was covered under that same grant funding. And hence, that's where the 13,000 was coming from. The fact that now there's another 25,000 that's being requested here suggests that this is a new item for the city. It's not something that you've had to apply for before. And is it fair to say that about a 5-year lifespan is what would be typical?
5 to 7 years, and it depends on how well the camera is covered. So if there's a little bit of a cover, and depending on which way the wind is coming, it makes a big difference, believe it or not, the exposure to the sun and wind.
And sorry, and if I may, a follow-on question, would this just replace the ones that have been damaged or need to be replaced? Or is this everything in the system that's downtown?
Some of them have been upgraded through funding that was left from the previous grant, and that was in our capital budget, and we've depleted that now. It's gone. So this is not to replace all of them. This is to replace the ones that are not working, but it won't be an additional or new cameras, if you will.
And if we, at some future date, had to anticipate replacing the entire system, do we, based on today's dollars, do we have a sense of what it would cost us
It's
going
about,
forward?
when you look at the electrical costs, the costs of, and Joe Reed and his team have been fantastic about assisting us with bucket trucks to get up there. And we actually have a member on staff now that is trained and certified to install the cameras. So it's going to reduce the cost. So we're looking at about $5,500 to $5,700 per camera.
And my final question, and this is more a perspective, do you feel that those cameras being available in the downtown core have actually assisted Belleville Police Services in terms of addressing crime that may have occurred downtown and identifying suspects?
Exponentially, and I'll explain that. Right now in our communications center, we have video screens up, and those downtown cameras are on the video screens. So because of our staffing shortages, we really don't have time to do proactive policing. Most of the policing that we're doing right now is reactive policing. So those cameras actually give us that bird's eye view that the dispatchers are able to look at and say, you know what, we're going to have an issue here, and we deploy resources there on a priority 1 call. So to say that they are valuable is an understatement. They are, it's a game changer. And at some point in time, honestly, because of what you're going to hear about later today in relation to Project Coyote, I would love to have a camera system at the entrance and exit points to our city. And because, I'll give you an example, with had we had cameras set up, we believe that we would have been able to identify the suspects for the Northway Lounge shooting a lot sooner. A lot sooner. Now, it was through a lot of hard work that they were identified, and a lot of provincial cooperation in that investigation, but having those cameras set up there, it would have been an absolute game changer. We would have had those suspects a lot faster. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I need a motion to receive the police budget, refer to capital issues number 1087. Councilor Jackson, Councilor Kelly, all in favor? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I need a motion. Oh, Councilor Crawford.
Sorry, Mayor, I forgot to, I should declare pecuniary interest on agenda item 8A1, capital item 1.011. I own property on a street that's listed for asphalt resurfacing. Thank you.
Uh, 2023 capital budget, Director of Finance, Treasurer, presentation. Brennan, where'd you go? Oh, you're going up? Yeah, go. Sorry.
Okay, good morning. Very excited today to be here to to present the 2023 proposed capital budget. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all the managers and directors who brought all the information together to get this budget in front of you today. Also, a special thanks to Kyle Bertrand, as well as finance support staff, responsible for the documents in your packages today. If there's any questions as we're going through at the end, please feel free ask questions. Okay. So this is the second presentation. We did the capital budget overview. So some of it will be common ground that we've covered, but just to start off with the budget scope and what we're doing today is we're doing the approval of the city's capital budget. So this is the budget that focuses on the capital expenditures of the city. And our scope for that is an expenditure that has a useful life that exceeds 1 year and generally is in excess of $3,000. The city's TCA policy, tangible capital asset policy, provides a bit more background for the nature, types of expenditures, and the individual thresholds that we follow. Generally speaking, repairs and maintenance types of expenditures, those will be dealt with in our operating budget in April 5th and 6th. With respect to the capital budget process, the principles of asset management are key. In the 2023 capital budget, we're focusing on projects which support existing infrastructure through renewal and replacement activities such as facility renewal, fleet renewal, road resurfacing. Ensuring that there's adequate investment to maintain the city's infrastructure that we have helps ensure that we're delivering on the levels of service that are expected by council and the community. This is very important. Budget also focuses on the growth aspect. These are projects that are strategic priorities and have approved infrastructure programs, plans that support them. Plans such as the Transportation Master Plan, Development Charge Background Study, and Parks and Rec Master Plan are just but a few that are included in the Asset Management Plan in the budget before you today. Additionally, there's projects that focus on enhancements and improvements. These are in line with strategic plan initiatives. Items that may be of interest included of that nature, the trash drone, Glenmore accessible washroom, or Northeast Industrial Park. These are improvements and they're focused on strategic plan priorities such as industrial development, community health, and environment. As you can imagine, when we go through this process, the city has more capital investment needs and requirements than can be accommodated. So to help in this process, we also have a capital prioritization matrix which is scored and reviewed to provide a priority for different projects to be able to review the capital budget and the competing priorities as ranked in the budget. As you can see on the slide, there's a number of different criteria and they total 100. In the budget summary package under score, the score column is where you'll see these scores, as well as on each individual capital budget justification sheet. So when completing the budget, as mentioned, main objective is asset management planning. This is now a legislative requirement, and we're on the path to compliance. The city completed their first, under the OREG 58817, completed the first asset management plan, phase 1, that required all the core infrastructure to be included. The city's plan also included all of the city's infrastructure, so leaning more towards the phase 2 requirements. However, there's still a substantial amount of work that needs to be done and that we'll be continuing to do for our submission for phase 2 legislative compliance for July 1st, 2024. And you'll see this in the operating budget where we'll be looking at refining data's conditions and overall service level standards for the corporate assets as a whole. By July 1st, 2025, we'll require proposed levels of service, life cycle management, and financial strategies. Once we're complete with phase 3, we're going to plan to bring an annual update. However, on a legislative compliance basis, this will be required every 5 years. This will be a familiar slide, but still a good one. It gives a good picture of our asset management, our infrastructure, and where we're headed. Overall, we have a significant amount of infrastructure. The replacement value of the city's assets is $2.3 billion. And we're in a fairly good situation having asset condition that's in good, which is not always the case for many municipalities. But still, there's a number of areas that require focused investment. You can see those in the yellow and red. And this budget, 2023 budget, is focused on those priorities. Another aspect of the asset management plan is the financing strategy. As you can see, the city is facing an infrastructure gap, no different than many others. And it's approximately $55 million a year, which is fairly evenly split between renewal activities of $29.5 million and growth priorities, infrastructure gap of $25.7. This table provides a bit of an update from the asset when the asset management is completed and the levels of investment and average since that time. As you can see, an area of particular interest is water and wastewater, which will require an increased level of investment in the future. And these are generally related to large-scale facility investments and expansions required in the future. However, over time, we'll expect to see these levels meet the average. So a bit about the capital budget process. The process is dictated through our budget and financial controls policy. Each department has submitted their sheets in September of 2022. There are critical review, a series of meetings and review with the CAO, treasurer, EMT staff, and as well as follow-up meetings with EMT and the finance committee took place to get us to the place that we are today. The proposed project list has been modified and edited to make sure that we're delivering a program that is both manageable financially as well as operationally. Included in your package is a capital budget summary. This is the list of individual projects with beside it the total project cost in the 2023 budget column and the proposed financing for each project listed to the right. The capital budget justification sheets provide the description, scope, and support for the proposed project, for each proposed project. It's a little difficult to read on the screen, but you'll see in your package, this is the example is Sydney Street and College Improvement intersection. Of note, and as we were mentioning in the objectives, there's a section for asset management plan to make sure that we're meeting that objective. As well as this year, we're ensuring that the operating impacts have been reflected for new infrastructure. As you will be seeing, we'll be making sure that those impacts are reflected in the operating budget. This slide provides a breakdown of the 2023 capital budget by different categories. There's a total of 105 projects totaling $58.5 million. 6 projects are the continuation of asset management related projects previously approved. 68, or the majority of the projects, are asset management related, major repairs, reconstructions, or rehabilitations to bring assets to their original service life. 3 projects result in energy efficiencies or lower operating costs. And 28 projects represent the purchase of new assets in line with the city's growth strategy. Examples include fairground redevelopment, Hillcrest redevelopment, and transportation services fleet expansions. The highlight or the key takeaway that I would take from the 2023 capital budget is an asset management mindset. We're seeing a continuation of resurfacing or other renewal projects in the transportation services section of $9.6 million and some significant reinvestment in the fleet infrastructure of $13 million. Also of note, debt funding is being proposed for 9 projects, including the zero emissions bus replacement, fire fleet renewal, Hillcrest Park, and the wastewater treatment plant. Debt will be drawn in accordance with the city's debt management policy. This slide provides a table and a graph of the budget by infrastructure category, and it's comparative to 2022. Investments were very significant in transportation services. I've tried to highlight it on the screen there, as well as the city's facilities. This was related to a sizable portion of investment in the Belleville agricultural site servicing, as well as building replacement, representing the spike for the in green in 2022. Investment in the wastewater is increased in this year and is focused on the city's wastewater treatment plant infrastructure. This is a significant area requiring ongoing investment to meet asset management renewal and growth requirements. As you'll remember in the previous slide, some of the facility areas in yellow and red would be represented by some of this investment. Also, for fleet and equipment, we've got a large increase in this area, and it's primarily related to the renewal of transit fleet. As noted, the projects were modified and edited to get us to the place that we are today. But that means that we had to defer and move some projects that could not get addressed in the current year. These projects begin the starting point. They're on the deferral list that's listed in the back of your package, and they start as a starting point, if you will, as the highest priority projects to move forward into the 2024 capital budget. The 2023 capital budget is financed from a variety of sources. We identify these as internal and external financing. Internal financing is related to reserve funds that's both taxation and user rate funded, as well as long-term debt. This represents about 70.8% of the funding for the 2023 capital budget. External funding comes in forms of grants, donations, and federal and provincial funding. For 2023, this represents about 29.2%. Funding breakdowns between 2023 and 2022 are fairly consistent, although we did have some spikes for long-term debt, as was noted, that would impact the internal financing for the 2022 period. Jumping off from there, this graph provides the same comparative presentation for the 2023 to 2022 capital budget, but based on financing instead of infrastructure category. As mentioned, long-term debt had a fairly large spike in 2022, and it was attributable to the Belleville Agricultural Society building and servicing. In 2023, you may notice there's a shift. We had direct taxation funded capital project methodology in 2022. This has been reverted. That funding or contribution is going to reserve funding. And so you'll see a spike in 2022 for reserve funding, but between the two funding sources, this is almost equalized. So what are reserve funds? Reserve funds are an accumulation of resources set aside for savings for future needs. Wastewater, water, and parking are user-funded areas. They are funded specifically by user rates and are not subsidized by property taxation. For water and wastewater, sufficient user rates are raised and transferred to reserve to support the long-term capital financing. Water and wastewater are both subject to provincial regulations, including the Municipal Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act, and they require self-sufficiency and sustainability. Within any year, the degree of funding applied to the capital project depends on the priority of the project and its readiness, and may not correspond to the transfers of the reserve funds that you see there. Budgeted transfers for 2022 totaled $13.6 million, and $7.5 million will be utilized from reserve funds for the 2023 capital projects. Included in your budget package is the city's preliminary reserve fund balances. These funds are classified as discretionary or non-discretionary. The following table here provides the discretionary reserve funds, their purposes, and the source of funding. These funds are created for a variety of services and are established through bylaw. Funding sources for these reserve, many of them come from the operating budget, but others also derive from funds from donations or from property tax or property sales. Discretionary reserve fund utilization was approximately 25% for the proposed 2023 capital budget. Non-discretionary reserve funds represent deferred revenue, which has been segregated pursuant to regulation like the Building Code Act or funding agreements such as the provincial gas tax. Non-discretionary reserve fund utilization was approximately 11% of the 2023 capital budget. And ensuring optimal funding, reserve fund contributions as well as the levels is an integral part of asset management funding strategy. It will be a key priority for the city. The Asset Management Reserve Fund is the main source of funding for the city's capital program, and you'll see it listed throughout the capital summary. Contributions to the Asset Management Reserve Fund are made through the operating budget. In 2023, the previous funding from taxation, as mentioned, is going to be reclassified as a direct contribution to the reserve fund. This is consistent with the funding approach as discussed for water and wastewater. Also, that may be of note, if the proposed budget is passed, the $540,000 of additional funding will be added in the operating budget to represent the new infrastructure costs. So it's important that we don't widen our gap, and if we're adding new infrastructure, we ensure that we're also adding the contributions so that when that infrastructure needs to be renewed, the money is there to do so. Another source of reserve funding for the capital budget is the OLG Reserve Fund. The city continues to benefit from OLG through the Shorelines Casino. Funding is allocated to various different reserve fund categories in line with the city's policy for OLG funding. The city permits the allocation of funds received from the prior year to be used for the current year capital and operating. A number of these are strictly for capital-related infrastructure investment, but there are some for capital and non-capital related, which would be the economic development, social infrastructure, and disaster mitigation. The table on this slide, represents the amount of infrastructure investment that's being made out of the casino reserve funds. In 2022, you'll note that it was $1.5 million was applied to our 2022 capital budget, and this was a result of COVID restrictions impacting that revenue stream. 2023 fundings increased to more normalized levels, and it's edging closer to the $3.37 million that we were earning in 2019. A total of $3.1 million is being utilized as funding in the 2023 capital budget for a variety of high priority projects. So similar to the Asset Management Reserve Fund, and as noted in the police presentation, we're making strides as well to begin funding the Asset Management Reserve Fund for police services. It should be noted in here as well that there is a allocation for a potential estimate of $1 million that we'll be removing from the reserve fund as we finalize the debt issuance for the police facility this year. The Canada Community Building Fund provides annual infrastructure renewal funding for a variety of service areas. These include roads, bridges, water, wastewater, recreation, and transit. Our annual funding that is received for 2023 totals $3.35 million. This is an annual funding that's received by the city. However, the 2024 agreement is still outstanding, and we're expecting to finalize that with AMO in September of 2023. In 2023, we're proposing to use the Canada Community Building Fund for a variety of projects, the Murney Street and Henry Street sewer separation, Rollins Drive, Chelford Crescent reconstruction, and the wastewater treatment plant primary clarifier upgrades. These projects align very well with the funding and support these high priority projects. Provincial gas tax is strictly dedicated to the improvement of the transit service infrastructure. The program dedicates 2 cents of the 14 cents it's collected in tax on every unleaded liter of gasoline in Ontario It should be noted that currently the province has reduced this rate to 9 cents per litre, but to date have kept municipalities whole. Allocations are determined annually based on 70% of the ridership and 30% on population. Over $766 million of provincial gas tax funding has been allocated to the 2023 capital budget. The majority of the funding is used in coordination with the Investing in Canada infrastructure program, helping to alleviate the tax impact of transit capital. The 2023 allocation has been estimated to be maintained. However, confirmation for the 2022 and 2023 provincial gas tax is still outstanding. We're hoping for an announcement this week, actually. Also of note, and as mentioned previously, the Transit Route 9 operation will be coming off of this amount. It's estimated that will be approved through the operating budget at about $90,000. Development charges are raised and applied to new residential and non-residential builds. These fees are placed in the reserve fund to help offset capital costs of growth specifically. The amount collected is dependent on the level and type of construction activity that we see in any given year. In 2022, the city collected and waived a significant amount of development charges. The projects that we can use to fund these need to specifically be identified in our development charge background study. Projects financed by development charges in 2023 are listed on the slide, in total just over $1.8 million. Of note is the transportation fleet and equipment supporting the growth of the city, and the wastewater treatment plant investments to support renewal and expansion of the facility. It's expected that in future years the city will see increased investment in growth and utilization of the development charges. The city continues to actively pursue all current external funding options, including government grants, to reduce the portion of capital investment that's allocated to taxpayers. In the proposed 2023 capital budget, over $12.6 million of grants will be utilized. OSIF funding has been applied, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, to a number of projects that will be shown on the next slide. And applications have been submitted to the ICIP Transit program, totaling $5.6 million. And these are in line, if you recall, with the approval that was made for the December 12th meeting for the list of projects that have been included in the budget. So the Ontario Community Infrastructure funding is a primary source of asset management planning funding. And it's been applied and utilized in conjunction with our 2023 asset management planning initiatives. A total of $6.35 million will be utilized in 2022. And the province has identified doubling its investment in the OSIF program, with an additional $1 billion over 5 years, bringing the total OSIF funding to nearly $2 billion over 5 years. Additional funding has also been confirmed for 2023 OSIF that's not included on the slide here, which will make funding available of $7.6 million, bringing the total to $8.7 million remaining for future years and asset management related operating initiatives. The debt policy was updated in 2022 to permit borrowing for 25 years or less, depending on the estimated useful life of infrastructure. Each year, the Ministry of Finance issues an annual debt repayment notice to every municipality. The maximum annual debt servicing cost for the city is 25% of its revenue, and this is estimated at $40.2 million. And to clarify the debt servicing cost, that would be the cost of your principal and interest payments on your debt. To protect our credit rating and ensure financial sustainability, the city's policy maintains an annual maximum of 12% of operating revenue. For 2023, debt is recommended as financing for a number of projects totaling $17.1 million. Based on the 25-year borrowing rate, annual payments for each $1 million borrowed is estimated at $66,100. The impact of annual debt for 2023 projects would represent an increase in taxation of 0.39%. This table provides a schedule of the approved debt to date that needs to be issued and will be issued through 2023 to 2026, with debt timing varying based on actual project completion and progress. An estimate totaling $98.1 million will be issued in this period, and it's broken down $76.4 million for tax-funded related projects and $21.7 million for user rate funded projects, water and wastewater. With future debt issuances considered, this table provides a breakdown of the city's future outstanding debt totals, broken down between tax and user rate debt. Outstanding debt will increase from the current $106 million to a total of $170 million by the end of 2026. Again, debt timing is contingent on the actual project timing and completions. This table provides a summary of the debt servicing cost for this forecast period. At the end of 2028, the debt servicing is estimated to be at 8.69%. And as noted with our policy limits, this will be well within the limit of the 12% debt policy limit. Again, another repeat of a slide from the overview, but an important piece of the presentation is the 2023 operating budget impact. So some of the decisions that get made at the capital budget will impact specifically for new infrastructure that's approved. These bring with them new operating costs such as fuel, energy, staffing, and maintenance, as well as the required reserve fund contribution, which this year we've got identified as about $540,000 based on the capital projects that are in front of you today. So next steps. I've said it a number of times and we'll probably keep saying it. The continuation of asset management planning activities with respect to capital budgeting is our main focus for long-term capital planning. Some updates and enhancements to the plan that will be required is a detailed 10-year capital plan and more council and public engagement in the asset management planning process. While the asset management plan addresses condition at a high level, staff are also recommending detailed condition assessments being carried out this year. As we continue to update and refine the asset management plan, we'll be in better position for implementation of multi-year capital budgeting. To ensure sufficient funding for capital, enhanced reserve provisions for asset management need to be established in the operating budget. We'll be submitting a request in the 2023 budget to increase the contributions to the Asset Management Reserve Fund in accordance with our asset management plan. Availability of external financing going forward is a major concern and will put pressure on tax and user fees. We'll continue to lobby both federal and provincial governments for more infrastructure funding. And with respect specifically to user rates, the Wet Weather Master Plan and Asset Management Plan contemplate some significant spending for wastewater treatment and collection activities over the next 40 years. This will put strong pressure on wastewater rates, and we'll continue to update and revise wastewater rates and water rates each year for council's consideration. That's good. Timing's up. That was my time. I'm all done. Any questions?
Yeah. Who are we missing? Right. Okay.
Hey, Sean. He's gonna embarrass you.
So what's, so you want me to put this on, not be approved?
1 to 105. So just,
Inclusive, don't put this here.
yeah. Just say we're gonna do them all, but we're gonna go through them all before we.
Okay.
You can explain what you want to do. Or I can.
Okay, no, I can do it. They won't ask me. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We're going to consent items now. Council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motions, member may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. I need a motion to listen to or discuss capital issues number 1 to 1.105 inclusive. Be approved. Motion to get it on the floor. Councilor Alsop, Councilor Enright. What I'm going to do is we'll take to the long sheets here, and we'll do it in combination of all the item numbers, and then if you want to pull one, we'll pull it and go individually back to that, if that's okay with everybody. So we'll start out on the first page on combined services, item 1001 to 1009 inclusive. Is there any questions on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next section. Total combined services, transportation services, 1010 to 1021. Any questions on any of these items? Councillor Thompson.
I got one, and it's really not in, and I apologize, Your Worship, it's really not on one of these items, but I would like an update, and I spoke to Mr. Ford on Bridge Street West from Coleman through to Highland. It's not on here. Is there any future plans for that particular section of road, if you don't mind, Your Worship?
Put that to
Mr.
Director or Manager Ford.
Well, thank you, Mayor Ellis and Council. In response to your question, Councillor Thompson, I'm going to reflect back on the presentation you just saw, and there was a deferred project in there for the Avonlea sewage pumping station of $50 million. That project is more than just building a pumping station. It's also putting the pipes in the ground to support that pumping station. So part of that project will be installing a series of sewers along Bridge Street West, all the way from Palmer Road, all the way down to Coleman Street, down Coleman Street, and then across the river to tie into the sewer just the other side of City Hall here. So as part of that project, which we're working on the design of right now, we're actually looking at coming down that section of Bridge Street West that's of concern, the concrete section from Highland Avenue down to Coleman Street. And if the pipe actually is located within that corridor, we're going to have to, of course, reconstruct that road as part of that project. And that's why when we look at that as being a $50 million project, there are a lot of components to that project. There's a lot of work that's required here because we're essentially reconstructing all of Bridge Street West from Palmer Road right down to the lower bridge here. So when we get into more details further along in the design process of the Bridge Street West and that sewer outlet, we'll be able to provide more details around what's going to happen with Bridge Street, especially that concrete section. But right now we are actively designing it, and we anticipate that we're going to have to do something in terms of putting that pipe in the ground and then restoring the surface of that road. So that's kind of where we're at with that project. So I don't have a firm answer for you, but it's right now we're looking at that as being part of that $50 million project.
So and I don't want to put you in any particular spot, but are we looking at a 10-year project? Or are we looking at a 15-year project? Just sort of, because there's people wondering, and and I'm sure all the councillors drive that road quite regularly. Just sort of some idea where that falls into our long-range plan.
Through the chair to Councillor Thompson, that is what we've promised the builders, the home builders in the community, is that we want that pumping station to be in service in 2025. So that means not only the pumping station has to be constructed and operational, but all of the outlet pipes to make that pump station operational. So we're moving quickly on this, and we'll have more details at the next round of capital budget in terms of exactly what's going to happen on Bridge Street West and that section in particular. But our goal is to be into construction sometime in 2024 so we can start delivering that project in time to meet the builder's needs.
Good. Thank you very much. And I think that's good news for everybody to hear, because it's certainly a main section. Thank you, Mr. Ford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And just a quick one, I apologize, it's on item 1.001, the Sydney Street, College Street West intersection, including Sydney Street widening. Do you have a sense on when we'll be commencing and completing that phase?
Well, through the chair to Councillor Alsop, we're still moving through the property acquisition phase, and then once we get the property that we need to build the project, then we have to work with the utility companies to move the hydro poles that are there, the telecommunications lines that are on those hydro poles. I'd like to say that could be done within a year. Sometimes it takes longer. So we're probably a couple of years out from actually doing the physical road reconstruction work, although you're going to see continuing to ask for funds for this year's property. Next year we may need to ask for some additional funds to relocate some of the utilities there in advance of actually going out there and doing the construction, which is probably going to be in the 2025 range. Of course, we're also considering the major work we're going to be doing on Bridge and Sydney Street at the same time, and it then becomes an issue or a consideration of, do we maybe defer that Sydney and College project for a year or two, because Sydney Street will be dug up as part of that other major project. So I think there's going to be more discussion at future capital budgets in terms of the exact timing for construction, but we need to go through this project in a stepwise approach, acquiring the property first, moving all the utilities out of the way second, and then we'll be ready for construction in a couple of years.
Fleet and equipment, 1022 to 1030. Any questions on? Councillor Thompson.
I'm just going to make a statement more. And for a number of years, I used to go over and look at all the pieces of equipment, and every year it never seemed to be wrong what Mr. Reed has put in here. So I didn't go over this year to look at it. I think that we got staff that's being pretty honest with equipment, so I think, we need equipment to replace, so I take the putties in here is really what we need, so thank you.
Councillor Alsop.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question to Manager Reed about item 1.030, the Unit 190-12 pickup truck replacement. I just noticed that the score relative to that item is quite low at a 10. Could you explain to us, what is the need and the imperative behind that replacement?
Through the chair to Councillor Alsop, my apologies. There might have been a slight clerical error. That truck at 1.026 is identical. They're both used for supervisor activities. They should have been ranked about the same. These trucks are used for supervisors to do customer complaints, deal with storms such as last night and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Millette.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, while we've got Mr. Reed on the hot seat, items 1.031 and 1.032. Mr. Reed, could you just explain the Zamboni replacement, and are we looking?
Sorry, Councillor Millette, we're going to make that next. I didn't call those numbers yet.
Did we not get through to 1?
No, I think 10:30 we ended at.
Too much caffeine this
Okay,
morning. Thank you.
Councillor Tatton.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm actually wondering about the rubber track excavator replacement. That's the 1.029. Also relative to the score, is it an entire, I'm just seeing 160,000. Is it the track on the excavator itself, like the track? mechanism, or is it like, is that just part of the name? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that machine.
Yeah, the unit that we're looking to replace, it's for the entire machines, would be a rubber tired excavator with track. So it's it gives the ability for staff to do ditching and rural in urban application work. It also is utilized for sewer digs, water digs, and so forth.
Thank you.
All the way down to here. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. We'll do 10:32 to 10:45, and Councillor Millet has a question.
Yeah, and sorry for jumping ahead there previously. Both Zamboni replacements, if I could just get a little clarification, are these, I know zero emission Zambonis are available. I would assume these, looking at the cost, would likely be propane, but if you could just give me a little further edification on those, if you could.
Director Huswick?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Millet, as you can see, our two oldest Zambonis are currently 20 years and 15 years, and the cost of maintaining them and repairing them is increasing dramatically. So these two that are being proposed are electric Zambonis, and included in the total cost, if you include both of them, is about $100,000 expense to actually extend the electrical services from the south end of the CAA to the north end, which is where the Zamboni Bay is. So that's one of the main reasons the overall expense is higher than would be expected. But also, as everything is happening these days, costs are going up, Zambonis have gone up, and the electric version is also expensive.
Thank you, Mr. Huswick. And one further question, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Huswick. Was there any federal or provincial incentives available in the purchase of these zero-emission Zambonis?
Again, to Councillor Millet, I don't believe so, but I will defer to Ron McGlashan, our facilities manager, in case there's any additional information he may be able to provide.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon or good morning.
How you doing? Through the chair to council, there is funding that's available out there. As part of the funding source, Brandon's insured, or Mr. Ferguson's insured, that we acquire some funding in order to help offset the costs. It's split between two lines.
Thank you. Yeah, I did see FCM and GMF funding on both of those, and it's great to see, and I'm glad to see we're jumping on any of those incentives wherever and whenever we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I was at AMO and spoke to two individuals last summer about the electric Zambonis, and they just talked about the benefits. And I did have a conversation with Mr. Huswick about potentially adding these to the city. There was the two models that I had conversations with. There was the 450 and the 650, and Mr. Huswick, do you know which one it is, or which one we would be getting?
Well, I'm not sure of the actual number, but it is the mid-size.
Okay.
And the smaller version would not be large enough in order to, one of the primary purposes, we have about 13 minutes turnaround time for Senators games that we use too. Smaller version just wouldn't be able to meet the needs, so it's the mid-size version.
Well, I remember having the conversations with the reps from Zamboni, and electric technology has been around since like the early 80s, I believe. So here we are, 2023, working towards that, so I think it's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? I had a few on these, but I guess it's under fire, and we have replacements, and the chief and I spoke about down payments on this, and the benefit of maybe putting more down and getting a discount. Chief, I'll let you answer that.
Through you, Your Worship, just to advise you that we have been reaching out to different companies that are providers. It is anywhere from 24 months to 36 months to actually receive an apparatus. So there are options of just putting a percentage down with some companies, but we have just been advised that the motors on the fire trucks have gone up by another 150,000. So what we're hopeful is that if we can pay more upfront, we can save those costs and reduce it. But last year alone, there was a 30% increase in the purchase of a fire truck.
No. So this was a part of an application we had submitted earlier. I think it was earlier this year. We are undertaking a zero-emission bus study to determine the electrical need for the facility and a phase-in approach. So these buses are kind of preliminary placeholders to ensure that we have the funding available to purchase them, and then there'll be other funds available in the future for zero-emission infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Chatton?
Thank you. I'm just not sure. Are we covering 1.034? Or are we just on the bus emissions at this moment?
We're down to fire, so we went to 1045.
Okay, I didn't hear that, but I do have a question about 1.034. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Can you tell me, Manager Reed, would you mind telling me the difference between Unit 287-10 and Unit 248-12? I'm noticing a $20,000 difference in the replacement costs, and I'm just wondering if those trucks have different functions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Manager Reed?
Yes, they do. I believe one is a 3/4 ton truck, and one is one with a 550 Ford, like it'd be a 1.5 ton. So that's the price differences.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move to Transportation Services, 1046 to 1054. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just a quick question for Mr. Reed. I looked it up too, Mr. Reed, but this, what is so wonderful, and I don't mean that in a derogatory tone, about the trackless sidewalk machine? Is that new technology?
Trackless is a manufacturer of our sidewalk machines. We've switched. Many years ago, we had track machines, but we found that the versatility of the trackless machines allow for better use year round. And from an inventory point of view, having one product versus having multiple different products available, we keep our overhead lower.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I got two questions. The sidewalk machine, is this a replacement or is this an additional? And the reason I'm asking that, we've added an awful lot of sidewalks in this city. So unless we're adding another sidewalk machine, we're going behind. So is this a replacement or an addition?
This is new. Not a replacement. Not a replacement.
It's not a replacement.
It is an additional piece of equipment.
So all as I would say for next year, I'd like to see 2 of these in for next year because we're adding too many sidewalks and we're not adding enough sidewalks. So my second question on the accessibility vans, there's 2 of them. Are these replacements or are these additional vans to be used for accessibility?
They're new.
You didn't answer my question.
They're not replacements.
They're not replacement.
They're not replacements.
So they will be manned? So
Yeah,
we will have 4 on the road at all times?
These vans are a kind of a hybrid approach. They are smaller. Toyota's come out with a product to have accessible vans available. They'll be utilized for pickups as required and kind of one-offs, but they'll also be dual-purposed and utilized by the supervisors who we currently pay mileage. So they'll be utilized.
But we know that the city needs more accessibility vans, and I know Catherine Brown is the chair of the transit, but I'm concerned that if we know we need more accessibility vans. If we're bringing 2 in, then I would expect that we will have in the operating budget 2 new staff to run these buses. Is that your plans?
Well, we're currently undertaking the transit master plan at this point, and we're gonna identify where there are gaps. I mean, certainly we've heard from the public that there's concerns. We know there's some issues that need to be addressed, and we'll be bringing those forward after the transit master plan is completed.
Okay, Councilor Alsop?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a question on item 1.050, the trash drone Myers Pier in Victoria Park through Culture and Services Department. So it mentions in the justification that the reason for the drone is to remove debris that's in the water that's at such a depth that it's unsafe for staff to be removing it. Is this a flying drone or a submarine style drone? I'm having trouble sort of picturing it. It goes over top of the water?
Your Worship, to Councillor Alsop, that's correct. It's actually controlled in terms of the areas that it can operate. So the intention here is obviously to support the overall objective of the Great Lakes cleanup, and the area between the harbor area between the two marinas is an awkward place for staff to be operating, and it's difficult to get into places, and of course staff would have to be leaning over and trying to clean up and different things like this. So this is an innovative approach to using new technology that would avoid having staff to do more dangerous cleanup, but also contribute to the overall greening of our harbor.
Okay, and it says that it's self-guiding, so it's effectively like one of those Roomba vacuums, but for the bay.
Yes, it's programmable, so you would program the actual areas that it would operate. So it's another new technology that helps us achieve some of our objectives and also protect staff at the same time.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just, further to that, and if I may, through you, Your Worship, Green Task Force, of which I chair, and we have various councilors who were on board. We had a demonstration, a video demonstration of the device, and it in conjunction with litter traps. It's the technical name is litter traps, but they're essentially litter traps that are being installed in our storm drains, if you will, because anything in the urban core, every storm drain drains right into the river, right into the bay. Some people may not be aware. We've now have traps that will trap plastics, cigarette butts, that sort of thing, that all eventually make their way to the bay. The drone, essentially, it can remove up to, and you can help me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Huswick, up to 20 to 30 kilos of trash in a week of cleaning up in some of the inner harbors and some of the demonstrations we have. Great piece of equipment, great piece of kit, and as we've heard, it gets to places staff can't, and you gave it an apt description as a Roomba for the water. It really is a cool piece of kit. So,
thanks. Director Huswick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councilor Millet's absolutely correct, and we're also working with Great Lakes Initiative for similar devices for the storm sewer traps for the marinas. They're stationary in water, and they do the same thing. They actually suck in water and the garbage, so this is sort of a two-pronged approach.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wright Miller, did you?
No, thanks. My question was answered about the drones. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move from City Facilities and Parks, 1055 to 1070. Councilor Millet, did you have a question?
yes, Your Worship. Actually, I have a couple, but on 1.062, MA Sills Field 2 turf replacement. I guess, is this another one from Mr. Huswick, or
Mr. Reed, would you?
Mr. Reed, okay. Mr. Reed, the turf replacement, is it going to be any change to the type of material that'll be on that turf field, or are we moving towards, I know there's various stages of this technology, and if you could just give a little explanation of that. It's got a high score. I do know anecdotally the state of that pitch is not the greatest, but if you could just expand on that a little bit, please.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Millette, we essentially it will be the same service, just renewed. Obviously, the newer technology is incorporated into the design and the field itself. We have been having stakeholder engagement with the various user groups, the soccer, rugby, football, and so forth. And we're going to endeavor to try to meet everybody's needs for line marking and so forth, and kind of come to a common ground.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other, did you have two questions, Councillor Millette?
And the others relate to 1.069 and 1.070. More specifically, 1.069, the Myers Pier Functional Plan and EA. If somebody could outline for me what's entailed in that, and I know that our long-term situation with the pier, we do have to make some decisions there, but explain what the functional plan and EUA would entail, if you could.
Okay, who wanted to take this question? Manager Ford. We'll lob this one out to you.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mayor Ellis. So, since no one else will step up, I'll take it. We've been having lots of discussions over the past couple months with Director Heswick about this project. And as we know that the current condition of the pier is not very good, and the council needs to do something about that, about the pier long-term, not just continuing to patch it up. And when we put the issue sheet forward, it was envisioned that we'd do some sort of visioning exercise in terms of what the pier could be or should be, and so that that information would then guide us in the environmental assessment that we need to undertake to actually go out and replace or do a major rehabilitation of that pier. So the purpose of this is twofold. Is Director Huswick's group, I understand, will be looking after the functional side of it in terms of doing a review or a study to determine what I'm going to say what activities should be occurring at the pier over the long term. Because if we're going to replace the pier, then the question is, do we replace exactly what's there today, or do we build something bigger or smaller, or do we add other ancillary uses to it that aren't there today, since we're going to be making such a large investment in this asset when it comes time to replace it. So we really need to know what activities will occur at that location so we can make sure they're planned for in the environmental assessment and the replacement process. So the issue is really twofold, is to undertake that functional study and to see how that space will coordinate and function in regards to everything else that's occurring around it in the Jane Forster Park area. And then from there, my engineering team will take that information and use that in the environmental assessment as we develop options to replace and rehabilitate the pier to provide that ultimately provide a facility that is what the city wants going forward at that location.
Any other questions on these items? Seeing none, we will move to
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just was looking at the parks, trails. We've got Shirley Langer, Hillcrest Park. I can recall, I think it might be a year and a half ago, that Councillor Thompson was involved with the Mentos Skateboard Park and Basketball Park that we have now at Riverside Park. And it's extremely busy 9 months of the year. And I'm just wondering, are we have any options there for naming rights, any of these parks? Are we selling advertising? As partnerships, who do we talk to for extra revenue?
who would like to take this one? Nobody.
All right, that's good.
Yeah, no.
Council, Manager Reed.
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly. Currently, the city of Belleville does have a naming policy of city assets. Through that stream, individuals or council can identify area or assets that are not currently named per se, and they go through the process through the clerk's department. We currently do not have a well, no, I do believe we have I know the FDC arena has some naming rights associated with it. I'm not quite sure the policy on that, but currently, to my knowledge, none of our outside facilities have a policy in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to, I guess we'll just do the quick and blue information technology 1.082 to 1.084. Any questions on any of these items? Seeing none, we'll move stormwater services 1.085 to 1.086. Any questions? Seeing none. Police Service Board we went over. Water Main Services is next, 1088 to 1094. Actually, we'll take it to 1096. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, and it's really, and I'm not sure this is where it needs to be asked, but it could be in the relining. We know in the city we have an issue with the manholes in the middle of our roads that are lower than our pavement level. That's a big concern, really. Where we notice it a lot is on Dundas Street, where we read that street, and the developers didn't raise them up. Now it's getting worse and worse. And we have a number of locations across our Belleville, and I'm sure everybody's heard about them. And matter of fact, we heard about it at the mayor's speech at Eastminster Church. Is there any plans to try to get those drains up, even with the pavement across Belleville?
Director Ashton or Manager Ford?
No. Mr. Perry?
Oh, okay. Mr. DeCola.
Mr.
Good.
DeCola?
Well, because Ray didn't want to answer. So thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Thompson. Yeah, that is wastewater. We have a wastewater relining budget that we had in calendar year 21 and 22 that we were unable to use due to staffing issues because of the corporate reorganization and study. And that money is incorporated, still available. Last council meeting, you approved our RFP, or it's an RFP, for the design and manufacture of our tools for assessment, relining, and manhole rehabilitation. That was done at the last council meeting on the 27th. Part of the relining program will be the rehabilitation and building of the manholes that are in certain streets for the relining projects. Also, another aspect that will be coming to operating budget in calendar year 2023, 24, and 25 is the creation of new standards and specifications for all construction projects related to the consolidated linear ECAs. So that'll be something that we'll discuss in operations, but that'll create new standards for the way that construction is to be done for the approval process.
So there is sort of plans then to look at the project over the next few years and have funding to raise those, each one of them.
Not just to raise, so pardon me, through the chair to Councillor Thompson, not just to raise them, but to build the future ones in such a way that perhaps we don't run into the same problem. So it's looking at the full assets in cooperation with EDS and Environmental Services, our engineering team, their engineering team, to get the materials that we need to build proper infrastructure for long term.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move to wastewater services, 1097 to 1.104. Councillor Millette?
Thank you, Your Worship, and seeing as Mr. DeCole has already got his mic all warmed up, 1.09798 and 99. Now on 97 and 98, primary clarifier upgrades, sludge thickener. I understand that those funding sources are from Belleville, and we're talking about substantial dollar figures here, 5 million, 5 million. And in particular, 1.099 odor control at 2.2 million. It's in our breakdowns and it's spelled out for us, but I was wondering because, and again, we've been over this, I think, in the past. Mr. DeCole, if you could give a high-level view of what's going to be done with the first two, and I believe those clarifier upgrades and the sludge thickeners are necessary in this aging facility that we have. But when you get to the third item, 2.2 million for the odor control, it's an increasingly vexing issue, I think, for not just the people who live in the east end of the city, but anybody who passes through that area, and now broadening into the waterfront and into the downtown core. So if you could just give that high-level view, if you would, I'd appreciate it.
Through the chair to Councillor Millette. So yes, the primary clarifiers, what they do is when the sludge or the sewage comes into the facility, we treat them, and in the primary clarifiers we remove about 65 to about 70% of the solids. And solids are a big problem at a sewage treatment plant because they go septic and that creates odors. So the current system that we have is antiquated. It is from decades many removed, and you can't purchase parts. A single wheel for it's over $60,000, and it stands about 15 feet in height. The new chain and flight system will allow us to have a very low level elevation above the tank, which allows us the capacity to seal those tanks, to put a low level roof over it at a later point in time, which will help with odor control. The sludge thickening aspect, the advantage to that is that it allows us to dewater the sludge, and sludge is a major issue. We move 60 to 70,000 cubic meters of sludge out of the sewage treatment plant for field application every year for nutrient recovery. The problem with the sludge is that it has to be thickened, and it takes time for it to be thickened. Unfortunately, sometimes sludge gets stored in areas of primary and secondary treatment. The thickener will allow us, that thickening program will allow us to speed up that process so that sludge doesn't stay old before it goes into our digesters to increase our biogas production. The odor control, that's looking at the O2E. I believe that some people have noticed some odors down there in the past. If you haven't, I'll just let you know. But by using that, O2E has completed a rough draft. We're in the final stages of looking at it and finding their recommendations for those low-hanging fruit so that we can do some immediate care. All three of these projects will improve odors at the sewage treatment plant because it'll make it run more effectively. But what we're seeing here is $12 million, and that just scratches the surface. There's probably another 60 to 70 million that has to be spent, and it'll be in conjunction with EDS and ourselves to plan these larger projects.
Thank you, and thanks very much, Mr. DeCola, and those of us who do understand the scope and the timeline on this appreciate the fact, however indelicate the subject matter might be for some, but it's necessary, and the demands on these facilities as we see expansion. There is only one wastewater treatment plant for the city, and as we expand in all areas, north of the 401 in the Loyalist secondary plant area, all of that is coming through that one aging plant, and as you pointed out, we might see some eye-watering numbers here at $12 million we're talking this budget, but it's only, as you say, scraping the surface. I think we've seen dollar figures of 100 million plus to actually make that plant operating at optimum capacity and efficiency. So thanks very much, but while we're spending 12 million right now, and we're hopefully mitigating some of the odor issues, we've got a long way to go and a lot of dollars to spend, so thank you.
We have one last item, 1.105, under environmental projects. Any questions on that? So I gotta do a bunch of items. Yeah, so I just pass it then. Okay. Have the original motion on the floor. Any more discussion at all? Final vote to pass the original motion. All in favor? Carried. I guess we need a confirmatory bylaw now. Rise and report, new business, council information matters, now confirmatory bylaw. The bylaw 2023.-5, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at a special meeting held on February 23rd, 2023, be read a first, second, third time, and finally pass this 23rd day of February. Councillor Chatton, Councillor Alsop. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Millette, Councillor Carr, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everybody. Thank staff also for a great budget.